Hello everyone, it's Friday, June 21st. Let's talk PlayStation. I am a little sick, and my voice is kind of f***ed up, so forgive me. So last week we were talking about PlayStation Plus and how Sony is requiring it to play online on the PlayStation 4, but now they've come out to say that a lot of features are still outside of the paywall of PlayStation Plus. We already knew things like Netflix, Hulu, and TV services are available outside of PlayStation Plus for PS4, but now we're being told that features on PS3 right now, like auto updates, is outside of the PlayStation Plus paywall for PS4. So if you get a PS4 and you don't want to play online on PS4, you can still get auto updates. In fact, it seems like the only thing inside PlayStation Plus is actual online multiplayer. Even social features are outside of the PlayStation Plus paywall, so you can still possibly connect with all your friends, record your gameplay, upload your gameplay, possibly use Ustream. They haven't really elaborated on this too much, but they are saying social features, TV services, and even auto updates are outside of PlayStation Plus. So if you legitimately do not want to play online games on PS4, you can still pretty much benefit from all the features the system is going to have, which I think is good, right? It's not like you're totally saying F you to the people that don't want to pay PlayStation Plus. They still get a ton of benefits and features. I mean, think about Xbox 360, of course. They block out pretty much everything if you're a silver member. And it was basically a total requirement to get Xbox Live Gold. But at least here, if you legitimately do not want to play online, you still get a lot of stuff. Which again, I think is good if they're trying to justify paying to play online. They're certainly making it look much better in comparison to what we've been used to now on other consoles, which is of course Xbox 360. So this one I feel like we should definitely touch on. Sony has released firmware 4.45 for the PS3 this past week, and it was to add notifications for trophies. You could turn them off if you wanted to, and of course, software stability. But some people are reporting that the firmware update was bricking their PS3s, rendering them pretty much useless. During the time that the update was out, hundreds of users were reporting that their PS3s were being stuck on the startup ribbon screen, and they just couldn't get into the XMB and start playing games and stuff like that. And so Sony did pull the firmware off. No, you cannot download it now, and they're obviously going to look into it and try and fix it. But this has been an issue for a very, very, very long time. If you've had a PS3 as long as I have, you know that Sony has messed up a ton of firmware updates. I remember back when they released the firmware update for in-game XMB, that bricked a lot of people's PS3s. And a bunch of random other firmware updates that weren't even possibly that big. Ones that included software stability were messing up people's PS3s. And they're doing this remotely. They're letting this update out to improve the PlayStation 3, and it's ruining people's PlayStation 3s. And of course, throughout the years of PlayStation 3, how it's been on the market, people have lost their PlayStation 3s due to this, due to Sony's firmware updates. And a lot of times, when these people contact Sony, they pretty much can't help them. This is a huge issue Sony has. I mean, when they do something like this, game sites are posting it up, and people that don't own PS3s are looking, and they're like, wow, I don't want to buy a PS3. More importantly, people that have PS3s are being totally dicked on stuff like this. Sony really falls short when it comes to firmware updates. I mean, of course, they've, in this entire area of games installing, games downloading, firmware updates, patches, they really dropped the ball with PlayStation 3. And they, this just tops it. Now, luckily, this has never happened to any of my PS3s for as long as I've had PS3s, but it's just like, when enough people say it, this is a real issue, this is something that's happening, and Sony needs to fix this. I mean, are they going to fix this with PlayStation 4? They're certainly promising that with PS4, you don't have to wait for downloads, rarely ever. Games are going to auto-update. But what about when they roll out firmware updates? Is this thing still going to happen? Is Sony still going to remotely break PlayStation 4s from wherever they're sending these updates out? Now, luckily, this has never happened to any of my PS3s for as long as I've had PS3s, but it's just like, when enough people say it, this is a real issue, this is something that's happening, and Sony needs to fix this. I mean, are they going to fix this with PlayStation 4? They're certainly promising that with PS4, you don't have to wait for downloads, rarely ever. Games are going to auto-update. But what about when they roll out firmware updates? Is this thing still going to happen? Is Sony still going to remotely break PlayStation 4s from wherever they're sending these updates out? This is an area Sony has never been good at, and they need to start doing damage control. And more importantly, they need to get their together. I mean, this is a really big thing. I mean, it just looks bad, and it looks unprofessional that you're breaking your own devices from where the company is. But I've got a fair amount of viewers now. Did anything happen to your PS3s? Apparently, it only affected people that upgraded their PS3s with third-party hard drives, which I've done. I actually didn't update my PS3. I actually missed the update and just saw it online after. So luckily I never even had the chance to download it, but did any of you guys run into the issue? I'd be interested to know. So is the PlayStation 4 launching in November 13th, 2013? Apparently a store in the Netherlands thinks so. A NeoGaf member basically posted a picture from the store that basically, poster, November 13th, PS4. There it is. Now, the store is Media Market, and they're actually pretty big. They're throughout all of Europe, and they're a big chain, so it wouldn't make much sense for them to just make up a promotional banner that did, had a false date on it and stuff. And as I've said before, time and time again, a lot of stuff leaks about Sony, so I'm going to say this is probably, there's probably a little bit of truth to this date. I mean, obviously, if they're saying holiday season, November's the holiday season. I mean, it's a no-brainer. Even if it's not November 13th, it's certainly going to be close to it. So, November 13th, around that area possibly, is the PS4's release date. So here's our cover story for today. This is obviously huge news. Microsoft has basically reversed their online policies of DRM, used game restriction, all that. They've totally turned back on everything, and they're doing it just like PlayStation 4, just like PS3, just like 360, PS2, Xbox. Put a disc into the system, it plays, pull it out, you can do whatever you want with it. Microsoft has turned down on everything that they've been spewing at us for the past few months. Now, I know we've been talking a lot about Xbox on the show, but quite frankly, they're Sony's biggest competitor, and it could spell bad stuff or good stuff for Sony in the long term of how PlayStation 4 is going to be for us. Now, right off the bat, Microsoft is writing this off as their fans helped them make this decision. Now, of course, Microsoft is a business. They did this because they're losing right now, and I guess the mind share of who's going to buy what system. PS4 pre-orders are certainly outpacing Xbox One pre-orders right now. People are, of course, very vocal. They do not like Xbox One's restrictions and everything. And of course, Sony slammed them at E3 by saying, we're not doing all this. And they were directly saying, oh, no 24-hour once a time check-in sort of thing. Microsoft changed this because of the competition. They changed it because of Sony. Now let's think of it this way. If Sony had used game DRM and an online check-in system, of course Xbox One would certainly have that, despite any kicking or screaming, because both parties are getting it. But PS4 chose not to, and they went into this. And you know what? I was genuinely surprised that they turned back on their decision, because they said time and time again throughout the media, we're not changing it back. This is what we're comfortable with. This is what we're doing. We think you're going to like it, because they obviously had some features to it, like the family sharing plan and all that on Xbox Live. So they were totally moving forward with this. They totally wanted to do this, and they backed down. Alright, but more on point. Xbox One. It got rid of all this negativity, I guess. Some of the negativity of what the system's been getting. No used game restriction, no online DRM. Is it an even playing field between PS4 and Xbox One? That is the question now. But point being, Sony is still actually in a pretty good position right now. PS4 is $100 cheaper, and it doesn't have all this Kinect stuff, which, a lot of people legitimately do not want, even if Kinect is possibly a good advancement forward, and it possibly is useful and somewhat enjoyable to use. A lot of people still don't want it, and PS4 still has that edge, I guess. Now, here's the thing, though. Even though Microsoft backed down on its policies, the fact that they wanted to do them to begin with puts Microsoft in a bad light, right? A lot of these stories are coming out saying, they're not doing it anymore, and I guess Microsoft is getting a more positive light for what they're doing. But really, I mean, they did this in the first place. A lot of people's opinions are that, like, you know what, Microsoft did this in the first place. I still don't trust this company. I still don't want to buy an Xbox One. They have a lot of catching up to do if they still want to catch up to the good limelight of what PlayStation 4 is in. Now, I've said this 100 times already. It's Sony's to lose. They're in a position right now where they are ahead. They are in the lead. There are more PS4s being pre-ordered. There are more PS4 games being pre-ordered. Most consumers are going to buy a PlayStation 4. So when I'm saying it's Sony's to lose, they're in a position where they could drop the ball at some point, or Microsoft could possibly catch up, and Sony needs to step it a bit forward. I know a lot of people are saying, yes, I'll get an Xbox One now, and that's cool because Xbox One does have some cool games. And quite honestly, I want Xbox One to do well because that gives Sony some competition to keep them raising the bar a little bit, right? Now, hey, we've still got a long ways to go. Microsoft and Sony still have a bunch of things to announce, and who knows, it could possibly change the tide. But Sony is definitely in the lead right now, and they just got to keep that momentum up. And things like in the media today with the PS3's firmware update, I mean, this is what's making Sony look bad. They need to keep this momentum up. They need to fix their old problems, which for the most part they have been doing. They just need to keep it up. I don't think it's an even playing field right now, but I do think they're catching up. Will they catch up completely, and will Xbox One beat PlayStation 4? Of course, that is a long-term question I cannot answer. I can only give you my conversations on YouTube of what I think. But right now, Sony's in the lead, and they just need to keep it up. Will they? I think they will, because obviously we still have a bunch of conferences coming up, TGS and Gamescom, and Sony owns more developers. They have a bunch of new games coming out. We just don't know what they're doing yet. We don't know what games they are. It's just a matter of waiting for us to see what they are. and I guess proving to even more consumers PlayStation 4 is the place to be if you want to buy a good console. Because I really do think Sony's doing it right this time with PlayStation 4. So ends another beautiful, terrible sounding episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. But hey guys, tomorrow is my year anniversary of doing Let's Talk PlayStation. What? That concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Bonecki. Thank you so much for talking with me for a year, and I'll see you next Friday.